So there's four types of obesity phenotypes that we have to understand before we can even get to the root cause of treating obesity. So the first phenotype is a hungry brain or abnormal brain signaling. Now, this type of obesity develops when the brain's hunger and fullness signals are disturbed, malfunctioned. You gotta rewire it somehow, some way. So take for example, every time you eat, your body's not telling your brain that you're full, and so you just keep eating and eating and eating until you feel full. That satiety will eventually settle in, but with that you're ingesting a lot of unnecessary calories, more than you need actually. So hungry brain is just your disturbance in your hunger and fullness signaling within your brain. So you'll have a strong hunger even after a substantial meal. You still feel hungry afterwards. You'll want to eat more high calorie foods because that's what your body's telling you to go do, is to get more energy dense foods. And what better energy dense food than high caloric, nutrient less dense foods, right? So there's an imbalance between appetite and fullness, so you'll have a hungry brain. Next up is your hungry gut. That is right, your hungry gut. How can your gut be hungry? Well, your gut can be hungry because of fast gastric emptying. It's just a fancy term of saying that all the contents that you just ingested, it's going to empty out of your stomach relatively quickly, causing you to be feeling hungry again, and which is prompting you to go eat another meal shortly afterwards, or snack on whatever it is you want to snack on throughout the day, because you're just constantly feeling hungry. So you have a hungry gut where food is just constantly emptying out from your stomach into your intestines relatively quickly, and you're going to be feeling you're going to be constantly hungry after meals, kind of similarly to hungry brain, but this time it's your stomach telling you that it's hungry, not your brain. But then again, if your stomach is telling your brain that you're hungry, there's two are connected, right? So you'll have regular munching and grazing behaviors. Metabolic studies have shown that the contents of the stomach is emptying out relatively quickly for people who have a hungry gut. The next up is your number 3, emotional eaters, or reward-driven eating. Now, these are people that eat for pleasure, that eat highly palatable foods because they taste so good. Now, these are the emotional eaters who also eat under stressful situations or times of desperations. The emotional eater phenotype is defined as eating in reaction to emotions rather than hunger. So people eat for either pleasure, eat because they're stressed out, eat because they're bored, eat because they're grieving, or essentially just eating because they're happy, right? And that's why when we celebrate, we always celebrate with food. So food becomes a coping mechanism for people who are emotional eaters. Now, there is behavioral therapy to this rather than pharmaceutical therapy, although pharmaceutical therapy will work, I guess, in some sort of fashion to help address the emotional eaters. But next up, we have slow burners. Now, these are the people that complain about their metabolism being slow, and they're always blaming it on their metabolism. Now, some people really do have faster metabolism, and that's just because they're more active. People who are more active will have faster metabolism. People who are less active will have slower metabolism. Kind of makes sense, right? Because muscle are metabolically active. Muscles are actually the most metabolically active besides your brain, but muscles are very metabolically active. So if you have less muscle compared to fat, you will have a slower metabolism, unfortunately. That's why, when you build muscle, you will end up also losing fat, because you just have more caloric needs and your muscles are always constantly just burning calories for energy. And so that's why your metabolism is quicker. But anyways, so yeah, these people, they're obese because their metabolism are slow, because they're less active with less physical activity. So losing weight is difficult if you're always just sedentary, right? You can, of course, diet is 80% of the game, but you can't also forget the other 20%, which, may factor in heavily depending on who you are. So if you're always sedentary, you will also gain weight easily, unfortunately. So those are the 4 phenotypes of obesity or just overweight in general. I guess it doesn't even have to be obesity, but you know, I was overweight. Now I may be still considered overweight on paper, but I just because I have a lot more muscle mass than I did previously. But those are the 4 phenotypes, and we'll go into each phenotype in another video. So stay tuned, everybody. See you in the next video. Peace.